Welcome back to the Instant Fame. Let's talk about a story that has quietly captured the public's imagination, a narrative that unfolds not in the halls of power, but on a tree-lined street in Queens. A story about a home, an idea, and the space in between. In late 2025, the political and personal converged in a way few could have predicted, centering on New York State Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani. The man, a prominent figure in the Democratic Socialists of America, has long been a vocal advocate for housing justice, for tenant rights, and for a world where a home is not a speculative asset, but a fundamental human right. His political career has been built on challenging the very foundations of a system that allows for profiteering from a basic need. And that is precisely why the recent viral fascination with his actual residence has become such a potent, complex, and unexpectedly revealing tale. It's a story that began not with a policy paper, but with a simple, almost mundane question from the digital crowd. Where does the man who fights for our housing actually live? This curiosity, as tracked by the subtle pulse of Google Trends, didn't emerge from a vacuum. It began as a low hum in political forums and local news comment sections, a classic tactic of those seeking to undermine a political opponent by questioning their personal choices. The insinuation was a familiar one. Is this politician a hypocrite? Does he practice what he preaches? For months, the search queries were sparse, scattered. But then, in the early fall of 2025, something shifted. A series of viral YouTube videos with titles like "Zohran Mamdani's Actual House, Leave Us With No Words, Take a Look," began to gain traction. These videos, often slickly produced and employing a tone of breathless revelation, did not feature a sprawling mansion or a gated estate. Instead, they showcased something far more ordinary, and in its ordinariness, far more disarming. The focus was on a perfectly pleasant, modest-sized brick house in Astoria, Queens, a home that was, by all appearances, simply a home. The viral momentum of these videos is a case study in modern media alchemy. They took the utterly normal and framed it as the shockingly clandestine. They used slow pans across the facade, zoomed-in shots of the well-kept garden, and dramatic music to create a sense of anticipation for a reveal that never truly came, at least not in the way one might expect. The no words promised in the title became a self-fulfilling prophecy, but not for the intended reason. Viewers clicked to expect opulence that would contradict a socialist platform. Instead, they saw a house that looked remarkably like their own or their neighbors. The comment sections on these videos became a fascinating battleground. Some tried to maintain the narrative of hypocrisy, pointing to the house's evident upkeep or its location in a desirable neighborhood as proof of some hidden privilege. But a far louder chorus emerged, one of confusion and then realization. The overwhelming sentiment shifted from gotcha to so what? The attempt to create a scandal had backfired, instead holding up a mirror to the profoundly warped expectations we have for those in public life. What the trend data reveals is that the public wasn't searching for a scandal, they were searching for context. The initial spike in searches for Mamdani's name in tandem with house and address was driven by the viral videos, but the sustained interest evolved. People began searching for Zohran Mamdani housing policy, DSA tenant rights, and what is a socialist home? The conversation, propelled by the sheer anticlimax of the initial reveal, had pivoted from gossip to substance. This is the unique alchemy of the digital age. A cheap political attack can be transformed by a discerning public into a profound teachable moment. The story was no longer about the assembly member's personal living situation. It became a live-fire debate about what we, as a society, believe housing should be. The four walls of his Queens home became a national talking point, a concrete example used to dissect abstract principles. And that is where the narrative finds its true power. Zohran Mamdani did not retreat from the unexpected spotlight. Instead, he leaned into it with a disarming transparency. In interviews and social media posts throughout October 2025, he addressed the curiosity head-on. He spoke of the home not as an asset, but as a place his family had saved for and purchased, a place rooted in community. He drew a direct and powerful distinction between a family home, a use value that provides stability and shelter, and the kind of corporate-owned speculative property he routinely fights against, the predatory equity firms that displace tenants, the landlords who neglect repairs to maximize profit, the system that treats apartments as stocks instead of homes. He reframed the entire controversy, arguing that the true scandal isn't where a socialist lives, but that in the wealthiest nation on earth, so many are denied the security he himself is fortunate to have. His argument was that his goal is not for everyone to live in a state-owned pod, but for everyone to have the same fundamental security and freedom from exploitation that a stable home provides. The public's engagement with this refined narrative is what solidified the trend. The story resonated because it tapped into a deep, widespread anxiety about the American dream, or more accurately, its erosion. In a country where home ownership is receding into the realm of fantasy for an entire generation, where rent consumes unsustainable portions of income, and where the fear of eviction is a constant specter, the image of a perfectly normal house became a Rorschach test. For some, it was a symbol of attainable success. For others, a reminder of what they've been locked out of. Mamdani's political message successfully channeled this anxiety away from individual envy and toward systemic critique. The conversation was no longer, why does he have this and I don't, but what are the structures that make it so difficult for so many to have this? The climax of this entire episode is its beautiful, almost poetic irony. An attempt to use a politician's personal life as a cudgel instead provided him with the most potent platform imaginable to articulate his core beliefs. The viral videos, meant to embarrass, became unintentional campaign ads for housing justice. The no words of the title truly did leave many of his detractors speechless, not because of the opulence they uncovered, but because of the profound normality they were forced to present as a scandal. It demonstrated that in 2025, the old playbook of gotcha politics is failing when confronted with a politician whose life is broadly in alignment with their professed values. The public is increasingly savvy. They can sense a manufactured controversy and are hungry for authenticity. So, as the online searches begin to slowly recede, having served their purpose of fueling a national conversation, what we are left with is more than just a political footnote. We are left with a clear, compelling image. The image is not of a hypocrite, but of a man coming home from work in Albany to a house on a quiet street in Queens. A house that is unremarkable in every way except for the powerful ideas it now represents. It stands as a quiet brick-and-mortar rebuttal to the politics of personal destruction and a testament to the fact that the most effective stories are often not about extraordinary things, but about the extraordinary meaning we find in ordinary things. The story of Zohran Mamdani's house ultimately leaves us not with scandal, but with a question. A question about what kind of country we want to live in, and what we are truly willing to fight for to make a place we can all call home. And that is a conversation worth having, don't you think?